They painted him as the Buddha of country music, a saint who never held a grudge, but that was a complete and utter lie. At a staggering 92, Willie Nelson isn't preaching peace and love anymore. Oh no, he's naming names, a list of 7 artists who betrayed him, sneered at his values, or twisted a sacred friendship into all-out war. Some were absolute legends, some were like his own brothers, and one was the last person on earth you'd ever believe he could hate. Number 1. Garth Brooks, the flashy showman Willie never, ever trusted. At the absolute top of Willie Nelson's blacklist sits the very man everyone else calls a hero, the one and only Garth Brooks. The staggering irony of it all still makes the old Nashville insiders just shake their heads. Brooks didn't just get rich, he built a global empire out of country music, but Willie swears he's the man who murdered its soul. Think about it. Back in the 90s, while Willie was grinding it out at dusty county fairs with his beloved guitar, Trigger, on his knee, Brooks was soaring across massive arenas on wires, engulfed in a storm of fireworks. To the screaming crowds, it was pure magic. To Willie, it was a funeral for authenticity itself. "You can't sell the struggle if you've never lived a day of it," he bitterly told one of his bandmates after witnessing the Garth spectacle. Perform Friends in Low Places like it was some gaudy Broadway production. The simmering tension finally erupted one explosive night in 2004 at the Country Music Hall of Fame. Garth was up on that stage, beaming, praising Willie as the very conscience of country music. On camera, it looked so heartwarming, so genuine, but backstage, Willie stared him down with ice in his eyes and whispered, "Next time, sing it like you mean it." That single sentence spread through the entire industry like a raging storm. Ever since that night, Willie has rejected every duet, every shared stage, every single photo op with Garth Brooks. He just couldn't stomach what Garth had transformed the genre into, a world of plastic perfection. Number 2. Shania Twain, the supposed queen who absolutely shattered Willie's faith in country music. Willie Nelson never gave a damn about glitter, but Shania Twain? She drove him absolutely mad. He once cracked that her concerts looked more like a Las Vegas spectacle than anything in Nashville. And believe me, he wasn't smiling when he said it. For a man who poured his soul into chasing truth in every single verse, watching Shania transform country into a dance routine felt like watching a dear friend sell their soul for a fistful of sequins. All this tension began bubbling up in the late 90s, when Shania's monster crossover hits like "Man, I Feel Like a Woman" and "That Don't Impress Me" much were absolutely dominating the radio. The Nashville bigwigs were ecstatic, but Willie? He was anything but. He grumbled to a sound engineer on tour, "Country's supposed to bleed, not sparkle." Words like that travel fast in Nashville, and soon everyone knew Willie couldn't stand the pop country tidal wave she was leading. The moment everything finally boiled over happened, of all places, at the CMA Awards. Shania waltzed away with Entertainer of the Year, while Willie just sat there a few rows back, completely stone-faced. The cameras caught him clapping, sure, but it was painfully polite. Backstage, he muttered to a close friend, "Entertainer, maybe, but that ain't country." A few minutes later, Shania tried to greet him, big smile, handshake at the ready, the whole deal. Willie gave her a single, curt nod and walked straight past her like she was thin air. People in the industry whispered that it was pure arrogance. Willie just called it honesty. He was convinced she'd traded raw heartache for slick choreography, real stories for soulless radio formulas. To him, Shania was living proof that the entire business had completely forgotten its backbone. Even now, if you bring up her name around Willie, he just changes the subject. For a man who has forgiven almost everyone, Shania Twain remains the one person he never truly let back in. Number 3. Waylon Jennings, the brother who turned his back. Out of every single person on Willie Nelson's list, this is the name that hurt the most. Waylon Jennings. This wasn't just some industry rivalry, this was family turning ice cold. They built the entire outlaw movement together, shoulder to shoulder. But hiding behind that legendary friendship, a nasty jealousy was just waiting its turn. And it all began with fame. By the late 70s, Waylon had grown to despise how every single headline screamed Willie and Waylon, but never, ever Waylon and Willie. He started spiraling, showing up late, drinking way too much, and fighting over every single song credit. Insiders say Waylon couldn't even hide his contempt. His eyes would practically roll out of his head whenever anyone dared to call Willie the king of outlaw country. Then one fateful night in the studio, Waylon just completely lost it, screaming, "You're too damn stoned to even play straight." Willie just gave a slow, knowing smile and didn't say a word, but he etched that insult into his memory forever. The friendship was already fractured, but it shattered completely during a joint interview in the early 80s. Waylon, trying to be funny but dripping with venom, called Willie a hippie in cowboy boots who forgot his roots. The reporters roared with laughter, but a deadly silence fell over Willie. He just turned, walked away without a single word, and completely cut Waylon out of his life. The silence was deafening, and they never fixed what was broken, not even when Waylon passed away in 2002. Willie was a no-show at the funeral. All he sent was a bouquet of flowers and a chillingly brief, handwritten note that simply said, "See you on the road somewhere." Everyone in their circle knew what that meant. It was his final goodbye, and a heartbreaking admission that the wound of that betrayal had never, ever healed. Coming in at number 4, Toby Keith, the so-called patriot who went way too far. Willie Nelson didn't just have a problem with Toby Keith. He absolutely loathed what the man was doing to the soul of country music. This wasn't some petty squabble over songs. This was a full-blown war over patriotism and politics. Willie fired the first shot, declaring that a guitar should never, ever be used to wave a flag, and while he didn't say Toby's name, he didn't have to. Every single person in Nashville knew exactly who that missile was aimed at. The whole explosive feud ignited in the early 2000s, right on the heels of Toby's controversial hit, courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. That song became a national anthem for some, but to Willie, it was nothing more than cheap propaganda, and things came to a head at a benefit show for veterans in Austin. Willie showed up to bring people together, to heal, but then Toby stormed the stage right after him, waving that flag and screaming slogans, turning what was supposed to be a concert into a full-blown political rally. Willie watched from the wings, his face a mask of pure disgust. The second Toby walked off, Willie stepped in his path and stopped him cold. "You're using music as a weapon to fight, not a tool to heal." Toby just laughed in his face and kept walking. That single moment, that laugh, was the point of no return. From that day on, Willie declared war. He pulled out of every single show, every festival, every lineup that had Toby Keith's name on it. He wouldn't even share the same charity circuit. Privately, he was even more brutal, calling Toby's entire act a cheap commercial wrapped in camouflage. It was years before Toby even dared to try and make peace, sending a message through a friend that he meant no harm. Willie's response? Complete and utter silence. He just turned to his crew and said, "I've met louder men, but I've never met one with less inside." And after that, an unbreakable rule was set in Willie's universe. If Toby Keith's name was on the poster, Willie Nelson was gone. And at number 5, Merle Haggard, the brother who broke his heart. When Merle Haggard decided to take a shot at Willie Nelson, it wasn't just some rival talking trash, it was a brother twisting the knife. These guys were blood, they'd ridden the same dusty buses, poured their souls into songs in the same cheap motels, and literally built the outlaw country movement from the ground up. But somewhere along that long, hard road, Merle made a fatal mistake. He forgot Willie's memory was a steel trap. It started with little digs, Merle joking in interviews that Willie's famous love for weed was turning him into a caricature, a mascot instead of a serious musician. Willie let it slide at first, but then Merle crossed the ultimate line. He said it again, this time on a live stage, with Willie sitting right there, just a few feet away. "Weed's a lazy man's crutch," Merle sneered into the microphone, and the whole place erupted in laughter. But Willie didn't laugh. He just stared ahead, finished the song, and walked off that stage straight to his bus without looking back. And in that one moment, their legendary friendship died. Behind the curtain, the fallout was catastrophic. A joint album they had been pouring their hearts into suddenly and mysteriously vanished from the release schedule. Willie's team started screening Merle's calls, and they never got through. The fans begged to know when the two titans would ride again. The heartbreaking answer was, never. Years down the road, Merle reached out, desperate to make things right. Willie's response was ice cold. Some things you just don't joke about. It wasn't fury he felt anymore. It was the hollow ache of profound disappointment. And when Merle passed away in 2016, Willie publicly called him one of the greats, but those closest to him noticed the words he didn't say. He never once called him his friend. That silence was absolutely deafening, a crushing final word that declared their brotherhood was shattered, a line drawn in the sand that they could never, ever uncross. Coming in at number 6, the one and only Kristofferson. The words "Willie would times never times forgive." Can one single sentence really incinerate a 40-year friendship? For Willie Nelson and Kristofferson, it absolutely did. These guys weren't just friends, they were brothers in arms who had fought through hell and back together. But unbelievably, all it took was one thoughtless comment to completely demolish 40 years of unwavering loyalty. The whole nightmare went down at a private fundraiser sometime in the mid-2000s. Picture this: a room absolutely packed with songwriters, a handful of reporters lurking in the shadows, and the unmistakable scent of whiskey hanging heavy in the air. Willie had just poured his heart out, performing a soul-stirring political ballad about the struggles of farm workers and the horrors of war, when he stepped off that stage. That's when Chris, feeling a little too good from the whiskey, leaned into his little circle and dropped the bomb. Willie's turned into more of a mascot than a musician. A wave of laughter rippled through the group. But it never reached Willie. Oh, he heard it, all right. Friends who were there said he just froze solid for a second, the life draining from his face, before turning on his heel and walking straight out the door without uttering a single word. By the next morning, the fallout was clear. His assistant was on the phone, canceling their next planned duet. From that day forward, a wall of silence went up. Chris's calls went straight to the void. Willie would only say, "Sometimes words don't fade, they stain." That was the only explanation the world would ever get from him. Chris desperately tried to apologize once, sending a message through a mutual friend, but Willie shut it down cold. He refused to even talk. "You don't get to call me brother after that," was his quiet, devastating response. Just like that, years of brotherhood vanished overnight. Now for number 7, Kid Rock, the wild card who pushed things way too far. When the news broke that Willie Nelson was actually going to record with Kid Rock, the entire industry thought it was just a wild, maybe even fun, but ultimately harmless experiment. What nobody, and I mean times nobody asterisk, saw coming was that it would explode into one of the most disastrous studio meltdowns of Willie's entire legendary career. Willie walked in there just hoping to make some incredible music. Kid Rock, on the other hand, showed up looking for an all-out party. This all went down in Nashville around 2008, right when Kid Rock was deep in his wannabe Southern outlaw phase. He pitched Willie this vision for a rebellious anthem, something loud, gritty, and totally genre-smashing. And Willie, ever the trailblazer and always up for a risk, actually said yes. But from the very second Kid Rock swaggered in late, a beer already in his hand, and started blasting his own times music on the studio speakers, Willie knew he had made a colossal mistake. The musicians who witnessed this train wreck say Kid completely ignored every single piece of direction, just shouting, "Let it be raw, man!" all while burying Willie's iconic vocals under a wall of ear-splitting distortion. Willie, ever the professional, tried to steer the ship back on course, gently suggesting a softer arrangement. Kid just laughed in his face and sneered, "Come on, old man, loosen up." And that was the last straw. Willie stood up, slowly took off his headphones, set them down, and walked out of that room without saying another word. The session was over, done. Needless to say, that track was buried and has never seen the light of day. When a journalist later pressed him on what happened, Willie just gave that classic, calm reply. "Some fires are better left unlit. But don't let that cool exterior fool you." Behind that one-liner was pure, unadulterated disgust. Since that absolute disaster of a day, Willie has flat-out refused every single invitation to ever work with him again. In Willie's eyes, Kid Rock was just another loudmouth with absolutely nothing of substance to say. So, I gotta ask you, what do you think? Was Willie totally justified in cutting these guys out of his life for good? Or should he have let time heal those wounds? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, smash that like button if any of these names absolutely blew your mind. And for the love of country music, do not forget to subscribe, Because these country legends still have a whole lot of secrets buried deep in the closet, just waiting to be told.